She has read in various places in Michigan and all over northern Ohio. She's a regular at many Ohio poetry events. Cleveland is her second home. She's featured her work at a host of venues in Ohio and Michigan, and she has a chapbook published through Poets Haven Press. Would that be the one? Okay, and that's available for purchase. There's 2 copies around the corner there. She has had the honored distinction of being a banned poet. She loves gardening, reading, sword fighting. Her specialties are foil and saber. She has a vast collection of Star Wars action figures and old vinyl, and she's an avid student of Eastern philosophy and a longtime student of the I Ching. She has perhaps put on more miles going to poetry events in the Midwest than anyone else. She has a 20-year-old son in the Army and a husband of 25 years who has Alzheimer's. Let's give it up for C.M. Brooks. Now, you said you study Eastern philosophy.
Yeah.
Now, the I Ching, for those of us who are not familiar, could you summarize in your own words what the I Ching is exactly?
Well, it's a divinatory method that was created probably about 36,000 years ago. It comes from, it's formulated by Taoism, but it actually is an old shamanistic method from early old China. So, I love to use it because I use it as a meditative technique. I usually cast a hexagram. There's 64. I usually cast one in the morning, and I use that as something that stimulates my thoughts for the day and kind of generates, so a lot of times, a lot of poetry.
Okay.
So, but I use it as a spiritual tool. So.
Does it inform your work?
Yeah, it does. Not everything, but it does. Yeah, I've written several poems on either Lao Tzu or Taoism.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Excellent. Now, you do drive
I do
quite a ways
a lot
here.
of miles.
How many miles exactly are you driving?
Today, it's going to be about 400 miles.
400 miles. Now, please tell me and everyone else, now, why are you willing to drive 400 miles to come to these poetry events?
Oh, my God.
Because we rock.
Well,
that's the obvious, isn't it?
Well, this is stuff that really keeps me going, keeps me alive. It stimulates my thought. I love hearing other people read, as well as sharing my own work. Actually, I get more from hearing other people read than anything else. So, you know, it's important for me to do this. So.
Well, that's very inspiring.
Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, C.M. Brooks.
So don't drop it.
Can I ask you a question real quick? Can I ask you a quick question?
Go ahead, sure.
You said you do saber and foil fighting. Is that historically European style, like medieval kind, or is that like modern sport saber?
Modern sport.
Okay.
Yeah, my son and I got involved in doing sword fighting, and I haven't done it the last year or two because of my husband. He's taken more care, but I got involved because my son was involved in a sword fighting group that was more based around fantasy and, you know, Lord of the Rings sort of thing. And so it was actually called the Boffers group. It's foam swords that they use. And he was doing that, and I got inspired to actually join a competitive group. So, but like I said, I haven't done it in a year or two. I love saber because I love hitting people on the head, which you can't do with the foil.
No.
Anyway, yeah, I find them very aggressive when I do sword fighting.
Great.
All right, anyway. I'm going to read several pieces. Some of them are based on Eastern philosophy, and some of them are based on experiences with my husband, who oftentimes is my muse because of his Alzheimer's. This poem is titled 30 Seconds. The window of opportunity is a narrow one. Trying to thread a camel through the eye of the needle gets harder, and more it can't be done. The mind has to find a way to fit through the smallest openings. But I watch as thoughts disappear like glowing snow, memories become extinct. Repetition is the beating heart of it. Only clear, simple instructions find their mark with you today, and it is getting old. The mind falters. It is an old telephone with a bad connection. It is a rusty truck with dim lights. It is a tube radio with frayed wires. It is the weakest link. I can't help wondering how it feels to live on a moving train, with no destination and no place to go, and no other passengers along to share the ride. They say that life is all about living in the moment. This should console me, but it doesn't. Somehow, 30 seconds doesn't seem to be enough to set the context anymore, because the candles are getting low and the street lights have gone out, and somehow it doesn't seem a life anymore if it has to fit on the head of a pin. I'm very interested in Tibetan Buddhism as well as Taoism, and this particular poem was based, I think I wrote it around the time that my stepfather died 2 years ago, and I was with him when he passed away, and was, well, I was sharing poetry. I was actually sharing a Mishlaf poem with him when he passed away, and I was also performing part of the bardo for him to help him make the transition. And this poem was stimulated by reading the bardo, Tibetan bardo ceremony. In Tibet, because there are no very few trees, they don't bury people or cremate them. They do what they call sky burial, which is leaving the bodies out for the vultures to eat. But it's a very sacred ceremony, and something about that stimulated this poem. So this is titled Food for the Ancestors, Reflections on the Bardo. The ancestors invade our world through self-staying portals wearing broken wings and jaded crowns, making their presence known by beating against the panes of frozen glass, reflecting, rattling the door frames as we sit. Our heads are wrapped in blankets poised on stilted plinths, walking barefoot on our borderlands. They dangle from the wind-whipped prayer flags that hang on sun-bleached poles. Their voices quake in drum beats. Their wails are heard in screeches of Tibetan horns. Their ancient strides mark out this blood-splattered burial ground. With fierce faces that crowd our dreams, we are hacked and strewn by firelight. At dawn, we walk among the ancestors. They sit silent as the final prayers drone. They come, reveal themselves as mist, rising from the earth, their breath encircles us. Vultures with enormous wings dipped in wax, carrying yellow votives circle in the red sky around us. Listen, hear them call our names as the sun rises. We are now the carrion that feeds the hungry ghosts, and they have their fill of us. Bardo's messengers among the jagged stones, our bones are cracked and beaten, bleached and scattered. They gather up our broken souls like pebbles in a frenzied feast. We are stripped and cleansed of illusion. The cycle makes its final turning among ancient rites and sacrifices. Life sprouts anew among the stones. We are transformed. Now, green mist rising from the cold earth, the sun warms us. We are transformed into clouds. The ancestors are the blue sky. One by one we take flight. Finally spreading our wings, we ride the wind and fly. The last year or so, I've been particularly interested in becoming a little bit more in my role as a poet. I find is really important in terms of speaking my own truth and being informed and being involved in social change in whatever way I can. I would do more things, actually, if I didn't have to be a caretaker to my husband, but I feel it's important at least to instill my writing with it. So this particular poem was stimulated by, there was an article written, I guess, earlier in the year about Buddhist Tibetan monks that were emulating themselves in Tibet as the only thing they could do as a protest to the Chinese occupation. And so this poem is based on that. It's titled The Art of Modern-Day Human Sacrifice. You reach for the unspeakable, dousing yourself with justice. Your palate is the open flame. Silent lessons to the world of human sacrifice. The Chinese government tries to hide you from world view. Just one strike of a match, just 1 liter of siphoned fuel, just one life is all it takes to become a martyr. No longer invisible after all these years, candles of burning human flesh, votive lamps lit one by one to illumine the moral darkness. Yet the world remains strangely silent to your calls for freedom and justice. Just one strike of a match, just 1 liter of siphoned fuel, just one life is all it takes to become a martyr. Buddhist nuns and monks whose lives of prayer are so transformed, considered terrorists and jailed for faith. Piety that feeds unrest, religious conviction, feared by their oppressors, and in death, they are more celebrated than they ever were in life. Buddhist prayers flutter in the breeze, nonviolent revolution with autonomy, freedom as the goal. Your final protest set ablaze the hearts of strangers. This must be what it takes to awaken the world from silence. Just another person to strike a match. Another person to pour a liter of siphoned fuel. Another life silently given for freedom. This is what it takes to become a martyr. Sometimes when I'm reading other poets, I get inspired. So part of this poem is stimulated by reading Sanders and Sinclair and Diane Koffee, who's a big favorite of mine. This is titled River Crossing. I spent the afternoon wading through Sanders, Sinclair, and Koffee, page after page, as if life depended on it. Finally, I discounted Sinclair's easy style because he seemed to only push his own agenda, and there seemed no depth in that. So how does one make sense of things? With days being buttressed by anxiety, and not enough time for self-reflection to even fit into a thimble. Important decisions needing to be made, and one's mind swimming because of it. It's the last days of April already, and so much is dependent on it. Only $70 left in cash, and the spring grass is nearly knee-high, with little to be done except for waiting. I have a small jar of bitter pills that sits on the table, ready to be swallowed if warranted, with 150 miles wedged between responsibilities and confusion. No opportunity for freedom or knowing whether one last try will even have the desired effect on unmoved hearts. It comes down to realizing this, that no one can do this for you, and no one can take this long plunge but you. One can hope to make the right choices, but much like preparing to ford a stream, you have to keep in mind that springtime eddies can be very dark and very deep indeed. This is an over poem. I haven't read this in a while. I wrote this a couple of years ago. I think it was based on a conversation sitting down and having tea with a friend. And sometimes important conversations end up being very unsatisfying. So it's titled So Much Weak Tea. Our conversations are too often only weak tea. They're seldom steeped with patience or with care. Are never brewed long enough for the flavor to develop. Rarely dark or deep enough for the aroma to saturate or permeate us, or to satisfy our hunger. Conversations have little real warmth or substance unless we decide to sit a while, let our guard down, and finally say what we really want to say. It doesn't happen often. In fact, it's very rare. We scarcely ever go down the hall to that spare room, the place where we really live. Go into that secret cupboard there and pull out something meaningful to share. We're too afraid to be judged unworthy. Too afraid it will be thought of as childish or foolish. Too afraid we will show ourselves to be fragile, vulnerable. When all we really want is to be connected, to be accepted, to love and to be loved like any other creature on this planet. When all we want is to be known for who we are. This one is based on a meditation that no, I try to do it every morning. Sometimes it's productive and sometimes it's not. This one was this simulated this poem. It's titled Drinking Sky, Waiting for No One. Cross-legged and blanket wrapped for warmth, I rolled myself up in quiet. A canopy of sky suspended above, nature dressed in robin's egg blue, cheap pink, and a slip of milky white that peeks through the fringe of early morning. Just enough breeze to stir sleep from my eyes. This is where I sit, drinking sky. Garden frogs singing belligerent songs, fighting for my ears, pond-side chorus just over the neighbor's fence. Their voices are like the Zen master's stick, striking me over and over and over, trying to make their mark, waking me. Sitting in silence is learning the art of waiting for no one. No thing taps me on the shoulder. It takes my hand to ride on the wind and spins me through the invisible fields and fences to the land of nowhere, not now, and be still. And I'm going to read, I think this will be the last one. It's not that one. It's a poem I haven't read in a while. It's actually one of my favorite poems. It's based on a Grimm's fairy tale story called The Handless Maiden. And I tried to write the poem from her perspective. If you ever look it up, you can find it online. It's a beautiful story. It's really a very tragic story, but something about it, I just love the story. So this is titled Memories of the Silver Hands. I unfold the cloth that holds them, tarnished and bound with twine, these silver hands, tokens, emblems of severed limbs lost long ago, old friends on my road to self-discovery. These hands feel heavy with the weight of years, filled with memories of wandering inside the white chalked ring of fear. These hands, dust-covered from years of lost freedom, their etched filigree, now hidden by time. These hands once reflected the light of the moon and found their power to transform and heal. These hands hold with tenderness my long story of growth through adversity, of finding who I was and who I was meant to be. These hands carry a truth I finally found in the wild and wooded places of my life and the harsh lessons taught by loss. These hands held the white light of hope that guided me, held time, the one witness to my sorrow. These hands hold the stark wisdom that was learned, ready to be passed now to the next generation. I wonder how much of their story to reveal. These hands and how much about them to leave a mystery. For our daughters and their futures depend on the truth that these hands carry and the ability to cope with brutality that can descend without warning, that strips them of their dignity and their ability to act, that leave them defenseless to sustain themselves, trials that test their faith in something more. These hands sanctified with so many tears, I now pass on to another as she prepares to walk the same journey to a land of possibility, where love and hope are the final redemption, and where we are all made whole, a land where we finally find the wisdom to do all free. Thank you.
All right. Christina Brooks, thank you so much. Beautiful, beautiful work. Thank you so much. That was excellent. Well, thank you for making the drive. It was absolutely well worth it, and we appreciate it. Okay, before we get on to, we have two more poets. We have one female, and then our headliner. I'm going to do a 1-minute experiment here. This is not planned. Here's what I'm going to do. I want us to conduct a little poem out loud here together as a team. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a few notes, and randomly, without collaborating, you're going to yell out a word and make a sentence, much like the alphabet soup, but we're going to make this a sentence as a team. It'll end when it seems like it should end, and I'll help move along the ending. So without further ado, I'll start, kind of like a story game, and we'll see what happens.